everyone, my name is Sunny, and today I'm going to be building a computer inside of an Xbox 360. Yes, this is a full-on gaming computer. It will have a dedicated graphics card, an i3 CPU, and will be using a mini ITX motherboard. Now before I actually start showing you the footage and showing you the procedure that I built the Xbox in, I first want to go over the parts so that you can really see that this computer is not as bad as you might think. Heaps of Xbox computers I find are on YouTube and are only really HD PCs basically built for Netflix or just watching movies on, not really gaming or rendering footage. So first up we have the i3 7350K, which is clocked up to 4.2 GHz. Now because this is hyper-threaded, it has 2 cores and 4 threads, basically making it equivalent to a low-end i5. The reason why I chose the 7350K i3 variant over an i5 is because of its heat. This CPU only has a 60 watt TDP, whereas a lower tier i5 has a 65 watt TDP. Now this might only be 5 watts more, but I do suspect that the lower i5s will produce more heat. And seeing as an Xbox is very thin, the cooler that I'm going to be putting on has to be very low profile and needs to be able to get some clean air, which is why I have gone with the NH-L9i from Noctua. This is a very good low-profile cooler that is very popular on mini ITX PCs. This cooler boasts 100% RAM compatibility and 100% graphics card compatibility. And in the footage that you will see soon, you can really see how thin this cooler really is. It is only 37mm high or 3.7 centimeters, which will make it ideal for my Xbox build. Now for the motherboard, I went with an ASRock H270M ITX/AC mini ITX motherboard. Now this is a really small and compact mini ITX motherboard that has 2 USB 2.0 slots and 6 USB 3.0 slots. The reason why I went with this motherboard is mainly because it has so many USB ports. Later on in this video, I did add 2 USB ports to the front, but I wasn't sure if I was going to do that when I bought this. It also has 2 Intel Gigabit Ethernet ports, 2 HDMI ports, and Wi-Fi, as it might suggest in the name. Now this Wi-Fi is perfect for my needs, and especially in Australia, it doesn't need to be all too great. This is also a really plain motherboard, all black, even though I won't be able to see it in my build. Where all the ports are located is very ideal if you're going to be building an Xbox computer yourself. Now, as the motherboard might suggest, it has 2 RAM slots. Now, for this, I just went with one 8GB stick of Corsair Vengeance LPX memory. This is a DDR4 stick, not DDR3. The reason why I went with one 8GB stick instead of 2 4GB sticks is because with one 8GB stick, I can always add in another one to give me a total of 16GB RAM. And for stuff like Photoshop and Premiere, RAM is really crucial. Now, going down to our storage, I have a Samsung 960 EVO 250GB M.2 SSD. Now this thing is wicked fast. It boots up Windows in around 3 seconds and handles all my day-to-day tasks with no problem. And the amazing bit is that it's not that much more expensive than a regular SSD. Plus, our motherboard also has a M.2 slot, so I figured why not to use that, as extra cables can always be a thermal constraint or just be messy and hard to clean up in such a small build, which is why I went with the M.2, seeing as it just goes straight into the motherboard and I won't need any cables to transfer data through. Now what makes this computer gaming ready and stand out from all the other Xbox PCs that I've seen so far is the incorporation of a 1050 Ti 4GB low profile video card from MSI. This is a super slim card, and the thing that I love about it is that it is very narrow but very long. I have heaps of length space but not a lot of width, which is why this card came in very handy for this build. It has a TDP of 75 watts and a 1.39 GHz boost clock. and it's only 18.2 millimeters long. You might be wondering, well, I have my graphics card and a motherboard, but if I put the graphics card straight in, I will have to cut a massive hole in the side of my case, which will look very ugly. And for that, I have chosen the HDPlex Silicon PCIe 16X 3.0 Flexible Riser. Long name aside, this is from a very reliable company and has a great price at which they're offering it for. It has free global shipping and is super flexible. You can even bend this and it will stay fully functional, which makes it perfect for going around tight corners, as you will see later in this video when I put it inside the Xbox 360. Now also from HDPlex, while we're at it, I went for a HDPlex 400 watt Hi-Fi PSU. Now the reason I went with this instead of a much more popular Pico PSU is because of the wattage. The highest wattage Pico PSU that I could find would be able to provide 192 watts, and as PC Part Picker suggests, my build is going to use 190 watts, giving me only 2 watts of playing room, which is not comfortable at all for me. Which is why I went with this. 400 watts is a bit overkill for this build, but when I found out about this, they had the 300 watt, but that was no longer in production, so I had to wait for the 400 watt to come out. I pre-ordered this from their website and was very glad that I did. This is an excellent power supply. In the box, it has a perfectly sized, for this build, 24-pin / 20-pin cable. On one end, there's a little bit where you can just take 4 pins off. Then you also have a 8-pin CPU power cable that can also split into 2 4-pins, since some mini ITX boards that aren't that powerful use a 4-pin. You also have a 8-pin graphics card connector which splits into 2 8s. And then you also have a 4-pin which splits into SATA power. Now this is where it gets a little bit interesting. This power supply relies on a laptop power brick to power it. This is why I've gone with a 250 watt Alienware power cord. This is 19.5 volts and, as the name also suggests, is capable of delivering 240 watts. The connector size is 7.4 millimeters by 5 millimeters with a center pin. One thing that makes this power supply a lot better, I think, is the connector. A lot of the Pico power supplies I could actually only find 150 watt power bricks for, using that connector. Now the reason why I love this connector is because all Dell laptops basically use it. I was able to bring this computer to school and power it on using a 90 watt power brick from a teacher's laptop. It could just power on into Windows. I didn't run or render anything, which would obviously make it use more power and probably make the computer shut down due to not having enough power. Basically, the last thing that I have to go over is the Xbox 360. I got this at an op shop for 10 Australian dollars. Now, when I turned it on, turns out it was faulty. They made a list on Gumtree saying that it was faulty, so the op shop did nothing wrong there. I just bought a faulty Xbox, that's all. So I got it all out, and the case was perfect for my needs. Now this is one of the slightly older white editions, which I like a lot more than the newer ones, which is more angular, or the Elite edition, which is basically just a big rectangle just sitting there, and it doesn't look attractive at all. Now with all these parts purchased, I was at a total of $1,136. But this is in Australian dollars, and in Australia, parts are quite a lot more expensive, due to the factories having to ship them over. Okay, so I have just finished building the computer, and amazingly it fits exactly inside the motherboard box. I still don't know exactly how big the power supply is going to be, since it hasn't arrived in the mail yet, but the silicone graphics card riser has arrived from HDPlex. I did add some power LEDs and hard drive LEDs along with a power and reset switch, which I will add to the top of the Xbox. Here you can see the graphics card riser, and it is very flexible, and it is perfectly sized as well. It fits really neatly underneath the graphics card. Okay, so I just got something in the mail, and it is the 400 watt DC ATX power supply. This is what I'm going to be using for my Xbox build. The first thing that I notice is its extremely well build quality, and on the left you have your power in, your graphics card power, your motherboard power, and then also on the right we have the CPU power and SATA power. And basically this is kind of how I'm planning the power supply to go for this build, but then the other way around so that the cables can actually fit into it. So yeah, it's going to be like this. And then another thing that I really like is you've got this massive slab of metal on the back, and then you could see the thermal pads that they use to transfer the heat from. Okay, so a little bit on the build progress I guess now, since all my parts have basically arrived. I tried putting in the motherboard and graphics card into the Xbox, and it fits perfectly. It's almost as if Microsoft kinda kept this in mind. I don't know, I don't think so, but it really seems like it. So yeah, the I/O from the motherboard is going to come out the back, and then the power supply will just fit into the front. I might double-sided tape this against the back to stop it from moving. And then a little bit on the progress on the back is I have cut out where the I/O shield is meant to go, and then on the front here I noticed that there are two ports which are perfectly sized for USB ports. So what I'm thinking is that I can just get some motherboard USB 3.0 connectors to go to two USB 3.0, and then I'll just super glue them in. So then with the faceplate on the Xbox, there's this little latch that comes down, and then I can have two USB 3.0 ports on the front, which I can use. And I just think that's a pretty cool idea. And because this power supply uses a laptop power brick, it needs to get power from somewhere, which is where the port comes in. Now this is just a big port in the middle, which is where the laptop power brick comes in, and then also you have two screws on either side. Now I needed to find a place that I could drill these three holes somewhere and make it look presentable, and try to keep it at the eye and preferably on the back of the case. So then I thought, hey, why don't I just put it above the graphics card? Because there's quite a lot of space there, due to having the motherboard right there and then the graphics card running along the side. And because the graphics card is quite flat, there's actually enough room to put this little power cord. So I've made a little template here that I just drew on paper, and that's going to be marking how big the holes need to be and where they should go. So then when the holes are drilled, I can have my power in on the back just above the graphics card. And then as you can also see, I have cut out where the I/O shield is meant to go, and the I/O shield fits in really well, if I can get it in there. But when it's there, it looks really neat and flush. I think I did a really good job getting the lines really smooth and flat, and perfectly sized for the I/O shield. It was a pain marking though where I needed to cut, but it was worth all my patience. And then I have also marked where all my motherboard holes need to go. So I have marked 4 holes on the inner little metal mesh thing, which is where I will drill a hole and then get a screw with a head coming from underneath on the top. And then there's going to be some washers, then the motherboard, and then a nut holding the motherboard down and secure. Okay, so now one day later, I have successfully drilled the holes and put in the motherboard with the washers and then the nut on top. The holes were perfectly marked and it was a pretty big hassle to get in there, but once I did, I was filled with joy and excitement because the final result just looked amazing, especially on how it lined up with the IO shield so perfectly. Now I'm going to be stacking up double-sided tape onto each other, and this is what's basically going to be holding the graphics card to the Xbox chassis. Okay, I've just finished installing the graphics card with the double-sided tape, and everything is working perfectly. I have wired basically everything up except for connecting the motherboard 24 pin to the 24 pin in the power supply. I think that all the cable routing is perfect, and as you see, the CPU cable just runs nicely along, and also the fan cable I've just taped to the side of the case. I have this little cheap AMD fan that I found lying around, which I might just put somewhere to try to draw air in, but I'll let you know how that goes. Okay, so I've also basically tied everything together with these little white ties, as you can see, to just try to bundle everything up and keep all the cords as close together as possible. Now, one idea that I did have was putting the power and reset buttons and the on LED and the hard drive LED on the top of the case so that I could see them through this little mesh panel. Now the power and reset buttons will basically just go through this little hole, and I'll just hot glue them together, so then if I want to turn the case on, I can take the little cover off, press the power button, and then the computer will turn on. And then also just the power and hard drive LEDs just shine through this little mesh panel. One thing that I did not end up doing was double-sided taping the power supply to the edge of the case, because it was already firmly wedged in between the graphics card and the side of the metal. And that's basically it. All I have to do now is plug in the 24 pin and then just put on all the sides together and then see how the temps are. One thing that I also did with a Dremel was drill out two little corners and a little bar that ran across the middle so that I could plug in my HDMI cable. And here you can also see how I've done the female power port. It is very secure with these two little screws, and the power cord fits in really well. Okay, so really good news, I have just finished putting the top of the case on for the Xbox and it all fits inside, which makes me really happy. Here you can see I'm quickly downloading After Effects, and Windows is also working fully. The Wi-Fi antennas are also working great, and at the end of this video I will have some frame rate and temperatures while using programs such as Premiere or playing games such as Overwatch. One thing that I did not really get to work was this little eject button at the left front of the case. Normally this little knob's meant to go inside, but it just wouldn't. I even tried taking the front panel off and gluing it in from the back, but still there wasn't enough space somehow. And that's basically the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching all the way till the end, and now will come the benchmarks. I'd just like to let you know that if you have any questions about this, or if you want to do this yourself and need any help, the comment section is a great place to reach me. My name is Sunny, and thanks for watching.